Welcome to a new coffee break here on my channel Firm Learning. My name is Heinrich and I want to talk about a topic that is key of any first year and second year consultant training at all of the big consulting firms such as McKinsey, BCG and Bain. And this is the idea of ownership, of owning your work, owning your responsibilities, owning the tasks that are assigned to you. And so let's motivate this with a little example and question to you. Does this situation seem familiar? And I'll briefly read this out to you. So the project lead is having a conversation with a team member and the project lead is saying, "Thank you for sharing the document with me you worked on last week. I reviewed it, though it does not seem to make too much sense how it is structured." And the team member replies, "This is exactly what I thought when working on it, though we discussed the structure last Monday. Understood this was exactly how you wanted me to create it, no? Right? So did you ever experience some version of this? So you get a task, you work on the task, you follow the instructions, though in the end, then you get the feedback that this is not correct, this is not how you are supposed to do it, and so on. And I can understand how this might be very frustrating, right? And likely mistakes have been made on both ends, both the project lead and the team member. And I invite you to briefly pause the video and ask yourself, right, what potentially could have been done differently in order to address this situation. And there's a very simple test I want to introduce to you that we refer to a lot during my time at McKinsey, and this is the board member test. The board member test is a standard that you hold yourself accountable to whenever you create a work deliverable. And this board member test says that you should always pretend that your work will be directly sent to a client board member with your name on it without other internal reviews. Right? So whenever you create a document that you feel like is finalized, that you feel like is completed, and you send it to someone else, are you comfortable? This is the question that you should ask yourself. Are you comfortable to directly send it to a board member of your client with your name on it, with the name of your company on it, without other people looking at it? And if you are, great, then likely you exhibited great ownership, then likely you are completely owning your work. But if you already know, right, if deep in yourself you already have this feeling that no, this document is not ready, I cannot send this document like this to my client, then likely you need to iterate on that, right? And this does not mean that you cannot accept help. It does not mean that you need to do all of this on your own, right? Of course, you can send drafts, collect input on that, but make sure that your documents in the end of the day, and of course this applies to all other deliverables as well, can meet this high standard that is described here. And to further illustrate this, I want to go over a few examples on what exactly this means, so how you can really exhibit ownership in your professional life. And these examples are adapted from real situations that happened to me in my professional life as well. Right? So let's imagine for the next weeks you work from a different client location and a team room was reserved for you. Right? So you organize this already in advance, talk to the client team members and so on. And on site, now here in this example, you are the project lead, you're asking a junior consultant to talk to the client assistant to locate the team room. And now your colleague, this junior consultant, walks to this client assistant and comes back and tells you that the client assistant actually said, "Sorry, there's no room available." And this is exactly a situation that I faced in my professional life as well. This was very early in my career. We just arrived at the client side. My project lead told me, "Can you please figure out the logistics? Where's our room? Can you talk to the client assistant and make sure we have a team room to work on?" Yeah? And then I was walking to this assistant. I asked her, "Hey, we need a room." This was pre-discussed, right? Is there a room available? Which is the room that we can use? And then the client assistant was looking it up in the system, but then did not find a room here. And so then I went back to my project lead and told him, "Well, there's no room available. Sorry, we don't have a room." Yeah? And then the project lead was literally just laughing at me and told me, "Well, okay, so what do we do now? Do we just fly back, right? Do we just fly back? Yeah, is this really the end of it? Is this really the result?" And then the project lead walked to the client assistant himself. And then, of course, in the end, we had a team room, right? In the end, he figured it out with her, and then there was a team room. And so the mistake on my end was that I did not assume full ownership of this task to make sure we have a team room, right? But instead of trying at least to do everything in my power to sort it out with the client assistant, I was just walking back to the project lead and more or less threw this problem back on his feet, right? And asked him to figure it out instead of trying to assume ownership and talk it through the client assistant to make indeed sure that we get the team room. A key part of ownership is also to create high quality documents, high quality slides, high quality deliverables. And while I was working at McKinsey in consulting, I developed a checklist that I use in order to make sure that indeed all the things I create meet highest professional standards. And today I'm offering to you this checklist as a free download. You can access it via the link in the video description and the comments. Have a look at it. I trust it will be very helpful to create high quality slides. Hope that it is helpful indeed. A different example. After a client meeting, you were responsible for drafting a follow-up email to summarize key takeaways and next steps. And so you draft the email and now you're waiting for your manager to review and approve it. And for whatever reason, it takes some time on the manager's end, right? You don't hear back from the manager for several days on this topic. And then a few days later, your client reaches out, the client is confused about the next steps and is also a bit unsatisfied because he or she would have expected that you indeed write this follow-up email, right? And of course, send it around in a very timely manner. And again, this is a situation that happened to me back in the days as well. There was the meeting, I drafted a follow-up email, I sent it to my manager, right? And then I hoped for feedback, wanted him to approve it, right? And send it back to me to say, yes, let's send it out. But then this approval never came and I just waited a couple of days and then it was too late because then the client reached out. And so what was the mistake on my end? And again, feel free to pause the video to reflect on this yourself. Well, the mistake on my end was, of course, that I thought it is okay to just wait for my project lead to respond several days, right? I mean, surely this is not acceptable to take days and days and days until you send out such a follow-up email. It is considered best practice to send out summary, debrief, follow-up emails like this as fast as possible, ideally same day, latest 1 day later, right? But for sure not longer than 1 day later. This is really like a key principle when you do these types of things. It's just unprofessional to take 2 days or even longer to then write down simple follow-up, debrief emails. So don't do that, right? And I thought, well, if I asked my project lead and I sent this email to the project lead and the project lead is not responding, then I did everything that I could, right? I fulfilled my obligations. But of course, this is not true. I did not assume full ownership that this follow-up email gets sent, right? If this would have been really important to me, I would have chased the project lead. I would have called him up, right? I would have sent him maybe a reminder and so on and so forth, right? Or at some point I might have just sent it out regardless, right? If the project lead is not looking at it, not replying, then I maybe can assume that it's okay, right? I can just send it out. But this did not happen. I just was not invested enough into the success of this whole initiative to not actually push for sending out the follow-up email in a timely manner. Assuming full ownership of your tasks, of your responsibilities is really one of the most important things that you need to develop as a habit in the first years of your career. This is what is being taught to you in all of the big consulting firms, what is really hammered into you and what you need to do to really graduate from the position of a junior. If you have any additional tips on how to assume full ownership of your work, let me know in the comments. I'd be super interested to hear your perspective as well. If you took any value out of this video at all, please destroy the like button for the algorithm and subscribe. Thanks to all the channel members and see you soon again here on Firm Learning.